Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming, and welcome to what I believe is going to be the most interesting 45 minutes for you today, unless and until you have plans to go out for tapas in the evening. Because, at the end of the day, it's Barcelona, the land of sun, sand, sangria. It's vacation, holidays. But let me tell you that Catalonia, Barcelona, is also one of the most dynamic places for business, for innovation, for technology. And today we are here to talk about usage of innovation and technology for healthcare. My name is Robin Singh, and I work at the crossroads of technology, innovation, and business. My job includes helping companies from this part of the world to explore the most exciting market of the world today, which is India. And my job also is to help Indian companies fall in love with this part of the world, fall in love with Barcelona, brand of Spain, brand of Catalonia. And we are talking of two countries, 5,000 miles apart, with same objective but very different approaches. And to help us understand more, we have curated this very wonderful panel here. I'm going to start with Alba. She is the scientific coordinator for Barcelona Supercomputing Center. Alba, thank you so much for coming. Before I go and introduce Rutuja and Rahul, I have a question. What has changed in the last 70 years, especially on digital twins, for example? I know that digital twins have been in existence for almost 70 years. For example, NASA used to use digital twin to send a spacecraft, but how are we so confident that we are making digital twins of hearts and brains here?
Is this working? Yes. So I would say that definitely we have been lagging behind a bit in the life sciences realm compared to engineering in terms of digital twins and the technologies behind it. And definitely what has changed substantially is the availability of data, not any data, but high quality interoperable data tailored to specific use cases. And also the supercomputing resources that are required to basically deal with this wealth of data. So this was not available until recently, purely because the means to generate those data were not yet fully developed. And in the last years, this has been a complete revolution in the life sciences field.
Wonderful. I think you know where the highest amount of data is. It's in India, a country with 1 billion people on the phone, on the internet. That's where you get the data, the high quality data. And let's talk about collaboration between India and BSc in that sense. Rutuja, she is a partner with Ikigai Law. She has been working with all the way from hospital chains to governments to startups and ecosystem and helping them understand the regulations and policy and advocacy. Rutuja, what do you think keeps the founders in India awake when it comes to regulations?
Hi, thank you for having me, first of all. Very interesting question. And if you asked any founder in the country, independent of a healthcare founder, I think the one thing they'd say is we want more funding because we are looking at struggling with our daily issues and operations. Second thing is for us to comply with the law. But in case of healthcare, I think it's two things. One, of course, lack of funding. And just to give you some data points, since 2014, approximately about 150 billion have been raised across sectors by the startups in the country, but the healthcare segment has not gone beyond $9 billion, which goes to show how little they've been able to raise funds. And second has been the regulatory uncertainty. A lot of them, because compliance is a big cost, right? So if you don't have clarity on how much money you're going to end up spending on compliance, and healthcare is a very sensitive space, right? It's very difficult for you to plan accordingly. And so business uncertainty remains to continue to grapple with regulatory gray area in the country. And that's the other piece that most founders remain awake at night with.
Okay, very interesting. So you were saying that when a foreign company comes to you and tells you that we have the best AI product when it comes to healthcare, and you tell them that, okay, you have the best product in the world, but we also have 50 regulations here in India.
Yeah.
So this is what, okay, very interesting. Rahul is the founder of a company called Grow Beyond. He helps companies grow beyond borders to enter markets such as India, for example. He has spent entire his life in India, but for last 3 years is based in Barcelona. So probably he's the best person to talk about both the sides of the coin. So Rahul, I have a question. What is that one reality check that you give to companies when it comes to you and tells you that I want to enter India?
First of all, thanks a lot, Robin, for having me here. See, and it goes beyond borders. The first thing that any company comes and asks me that, okay, we want to enter India, the first reality check for them is that you are not going to cater to 1.4 billion people straight up. You have to tailor your product to the right target audience, because that 1.4 billion is a very, very attractive number to look at. But in reality, a consumer tech is possibly looking at 5 to 10% of that population as the total target audience. Health tech maybe slightly more. But they need a reality check in terms of the number of people that they're going to target. It's not 1.4 billion. Possibly it will be just 140 million. But even then, that's a huge, huge number compared to the population that we're looking at in Europe.
Okay, very interesting. In fact, let me tell you, this is what I do day in and day out, helping Catalan companies from this part of the world to enter India and South Asia. You know what we hear every day from companies? Even if we get 1% of Indian market share, we are happy, which is 14 million. So you're talking of 40 million, I'm saying 14 million, and they're happy. And that's where the reality should come in. I think it's not an easy market. We need to look at mid to long term. All right, so let's try and divide this into 3 buckets here. The first bucket is, let's talk about the foundation. What are the governments doing? I think, like Alba and Rutuja, you both mentioned that it's a very sensitive topic, healthcare, and governments are very sensitive, and as they should be. Let's talk about approaches that governments are taking in both these countries. The second will be the ecosystem play. And I'm sorry, I should also tell you that we were expecting Jorge from Hospital Clinic, but he is not too well today. So I am giving you a chance if anybody from the medical background, rarest of the rare chance, would want to be on the stage talking about ecosystem play in healthcare. Anybody? It's a rare opportunity. No one? Okay. So I'll take questions at the end then. So the second is the ecosystem play that we're going to talk about. What are startups doing? What are research centers doing? And how can we culminate everything to reach to the objective that we have? And the third one, we are going to talk about trust and guardrails, for example, which is very, very important. All the amazing innovations happening, but what if the patients don't trust, the doctors don't adapt, and governments don't approve? So this is what we are going to talk in the third segment. So Rutuja, I'll go to you first. The Ayushman Bharat scheme in India, they have created 80 crores for European audience, 800 million ID cards, which is probably double the population of EU. That's what we have created. Tell us more about it. For example, if I am a patient somewhere in the village in Maharashtra and I have a complex medical history, how is this Ayushman Bharat helping me?
So let me just explain what that concept is. The idea for the Indian government was to create information highways. In this case, with the Ayushman Bharat Digital Health Mission, was to create information highways with patients' healthcare information. And what the idea behind it was, all the doctors and the patients in the country should be able to access their respective health data independent of where they are in the country, who they are, and whatever may be your complexity of the medical history. It's supposed to be portable, easy to access, and safe to keep. That was the intention and remains the intention behind the mission. The mission has about 4 components to it. One is that the patients get a unique health ID. There is a registry of all kinds of medical practitioners across the domain in that registry. And the third is going to be a list of different kinds of healthcare facilities that would want to enlist themselves onto that platform. And the fourth is an interoperable interface of sorts where you can access your ID, the information stored on it, through different medical practitioners or by different medical facilities, so that if I am a patient from a remote part of the western part of India with multiple complexities, and I have, for some reason or the other, and found myself in the southern part of the country and I have to go to the doctor, I don't have to narrate my entire history to him. He can simply access my digital health ID and look up all of my records and see what has been my history so far, and then accordingly give me my consultation and therefore the prescriptions. That's been the idea behind the mission. I think in many ways the pandemic expedited the number of people that we saw getting onboarded onto this mission itself. I think it remains a long way for the mission to also get a lot more people onto it. But I think the intention was also to have it interoperable between both public and private healthcare institutions. And that in many ways we can see happening. I think there's a long road to go, but we do see that change happening in small bits and pieces. The other thing that's going to make it tricky for the mission to scale up is going to be the compliance with the Indian Data Protection Act. And how do you retain the data, take consent from the patients to use it, but also to keep it safe and secure. I think it's going to be a question of time and seeing how it scales up, but it seems promising so far.
So I have a follow-up question on that, Rutuja. How do you make sure that a person who's not educated enough to understand what my data is going to be like or what can you do with my data, and he is in a complex medical history, so what do you do then? I mean, you don't have consent from him to use his data, but you all still have to treat him. So it's a very tricky situation.
I think a couple of things, right? To take his consent and to treat him will remain two separate things.
Mm-hmm.
You can continue to serve as a patient by going the old school route of asking the relevant questions you need and then serve as the patient, as opposed to using the entire digital interface that the government is providing you. But before all of that, India has a very strong grassroots level presence of local healthcare workers that continue to help patients understand what are their rights, what are they going to be expecting from the medical fraternity. And we can see this, and they're called as ASHA workers. We can see this in case of, say, pregnant women in rural parts of the country, what they're supposed to eat, what they're not supposed to eat, their levels of anemic balance, what kind of medication they get access to, and so on and so forth. And the government is trying to tap onto this really robust network of grassroots level workers to help people understand and to create awareness of what these digital IDs actually mean for them. What are the pros and cons of it? What does consent actually mean? In what form or shape will that come to you? Because it's also a very linguistically diverse country, right? So I may ask you your consent in English or Hindi. It may not really work for me if I am in a state speaking Tamil or Bengali, right? So from that perspective, the government does intend and has been tapping on to the grassroots level workers extensively to help people understand what this tech means and how to use it better. I think during the pandemic, we also saw a lot of uptick with telemedicine in itself. And even there, we could see that the local clinicians were telling the patients first, what does it look like? So we saw a gradual progression from patients going into the physical space of a clinic to seek advice and subsequently move on to an online space once you felt that trust level is established, and then go on to use the digital space, so as to creating a phygital space of sorts for the patients in the country.
Okay, amazing, nice. Alba, probably I'll take a leaf out of what Rutuja just mentioned about taking consent. But before that, I would want to talk a bit more about the digital twins, because that is something which is very interesting for the audience also to know. Just imagine using data and computer and machines to create a twin of your heart. How many times is it beating? What did you have? What's the blood flow like? And testing the virtual patient through that. Tell us a bit more about that, Alba, because when I was gathering, like I mentioned, from spacecraft to heart, tell us a bit more about that.
So the digital twin of the human body is something of a vision. It's a keyword that is appearing and everywhere in the last years in the European Commission, and the governments are pushing towards enabling that technology. Mostly it is now living in the realm of research because it is extremely complex to elaborate a digital twin of a part of the body, not to mention the whole human body. This is actually a digital twin of the whole human body is not something that we as a society are aiming at, because what really matters is to replicate specific conditions, specific organs of specific patients, and to tailor the solutions to treat their ailments, no? Their specific condition. For instance, the digital twins of the heart, this is a reality for very specific cardiopathies, but it's still in the research arena, although it is being now transferred into clinical trials. So there are clinical trials for that. At the Barcelona Supercomputing Center, for instance, we have developed this three-dimensional digital twin of the heart, incorporating personalized information taken from magnetic resonance imaging from patients with cardiopathies. And the digital twin replicates the electrophysiology of the heart and alters it according to the alterations that the patient would have. In this way, you can also simulate which treatments could affect in one way or the other in terms of electroconductivity. Still, this does not simulate how a specific drug for this cardiopathy may affect your liver, for instance. No? So these will be subsequent stages for digital twins. But as I mentioned before, having a wealth of data is extremely essential, no, for that. Like, we cannot ignore the wealth of genomic data that we have since the Human Genome Project in the 2000s, no, which was completed in 2000s. This was sold as, you know, the big solution, no, that will enable us to solve virtually all diseases. It turned out that we gained lots of knowledge from the Human Genome Project, but what we realized is that there were greater unknowns that we have been tackling in the years afterwards. One of them was mostly, well, the genome is not as simple as we thought, and then there is a big challenge on how to store that data and how to make it actionable. So it is not as simple as I have these many files that occupy this many gigabytes or petabytes, but I actually need to do something with them so that we can compare these millions, hundreds of millions of base pairs in the genomes, right? So overall, I would say that the human digital twins will be, in some years, a reality for very specific conditions and for some parts of the body, say some organs. But we shouldn't be thinking right now of a whole human digital twin. We'll get there for specific conditions, and it will be a great revolution.
This is interesting. And will the digital twin of the heart will also have the same nervousness to be on the stage like the real heart, like I'm having now? Will they have the same fear of being on the stage, the digital digital heart?
Well, hopefully they will not have any feelings.
Okay, perfect then. All right, Rahul, how do we tell us a bit more about this concept? We always tell that Barcelona is the land of innovation, land of technology, probably one of the best in the world when it comes to research happening in this part of the world. But how do we take this to countries like India?
Well, Rutuja touched upon it with regards to the regulatory issues that, and she's the expert when it comes to the regulatory part. But when it comes to, I can talk from a commercial aspect of it. First and foremost is having realistic expectations.
Mm-hmm.
When I talked about the total audience that is available or the total market size that is available to companies enter into a market like India with unrealistic expectations. Like you said, 1%, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I said the total addressable market would possibly be just about 10%. When people think about investment and the return on investment, if that at the first place is aligned, then things become much easier going forward. The other is that one needs to really understand that when you are entering India, you're not entering one country. I mean, geographically, yes, but you've got multiple languages. You've got every state that has a different language, a different culture, a completely different way in which people look at an international company coming in and people willing to share or trust them. So a Delhi or a Mumbai or other metropolitan or tier 1 cities would look at a company very differently versus what a tier 2 or a tier 3 city would look at. That's the first aspect of if the expectations are matched. The second thing is that if you find the right partners when you are about to enter the country, You need to be aligned in terms of whether the partner that you're going to align with in terms of market entry, whether that partner has the same values, same understanding of the market, whether your investment principles are aligned or not, and lastly, whether they themselves understand the market or they have the depth of the market or not. So that's in short that I would say is something that can bridge, other than the regulatory part, that can really bridge the gap between making a market entry much smoother.
Okay, fair enough. I think that you've touched upon the commercial aspects very, very interestingly. So this is what we also tell companies here and startups and research centers here, that probably India was not ready 15 years ago for this new cutting edge technology which comes from Europe, but India now is ready. Like Mr. Ghosh mentioned, that India is now ready to adapt.
Oh, absolutely, and I think he also touched upon the part wherein the overall financial inclusion and the UPI payments that have really been at the forefront of ensuring that everyone is a part of that financial inclusion and everyone can simply just pay in a formal economy. And that has been a critical part in making companies believe the country more.
Okay, interesting. Rutuja, let's go to the second part, the ecosystem play. India has about 11,000 plus healthcare startups. But like you mentioned, the funding has not been as much as, let's say, in terms of percentage of the total funding. So what do you think? Is it the regulation from the government which is stopping? Is it the new cutting edge technology crashing into regulations? Or is it something else? Is it that market is not ready for them?
I think it's a combination of a bunch of those things that you've mentioned. Yes, there are a fair few health tech startups in the country, but we have only about 8 unicorns from them. And that too, we haven't had any in the last 2 years. And I do think in many ways, all of the enthusiasm, the predictions in the healthcare space was because of the pandemic, because it compelled you to go and use the tech, right? And now that it's gone, you can see the true test of how the people in India are actually relying on the technology to be able to get better healthcare service. I think trust remains a very key part of adoption of any kind of cutting edge tech, especially on something in healthcare, because it's just so close to your physical being, right? And I think in many ways, companies do struggle to sort of keep up with that for 2 reasons. One, because your R&D has to be that robust. Your deployment has to be curated to that specific segment of people. And India, like you said, is a very, very nuanced, a very fragmented market. Even within a state, you will find different nuances. To keep up with that is not very easy. And it is fairly time consuming. So oftentimes you end up hitting your investment timelines, right? And the second is lack of a very robust regulatory framework. We don't have that in the country. Much like generally on AI, we have been having a wait and watch kind of a approach to regulation. And as a result of which, because there is a lot of regulatory grayness, the companies rely on contractual arrangements between their developers, deployers, between the hospitals and everybody else. So you're basically relying on the liabilities coming out of a contractual setup, not what the law is dictating for you. So you are not getting into a transaction knowing what is going to be your obligation and not. And that creates a fair amount of, a fair amount of gap in the way you're going to develop your product and deploy it, but also creates enough room for you to have trust issues. When something goes wrong, how do you go about tracing somebody's liability is going to be a key question. You can't keep going back and saying, oh, the contract here was different, so the conversation here is going to be different versus somebody else's contract. And that continues to be a big problem. I think the last part is, of course, infrastructure. I mean, yes, digital inclusion has picked up in many ways across the country, but there is still a while for it to go, which means that in some parts of the country, you will see the uptick to be fairly high. Not so much in the other parts of the country, and that equality is yet to come in. So that's the other reason for it.
Very interesting. I think just for the audience to know, everybody talks about Bay Area, about London, about Berlin, Singapore as the startup, or Tel Aviv for that matter, the startup capital of the world. Well, let me tell you, there are 3 Bs, or maybe I would stick to 2 Bs that we are missing. One is Barcelona, the second one is Bangalore. There are startups, companies, research centers, innovation coming out of these 2 cities which are not marketed as well as it should be. So please remember that. And I will give you an example for this. The first example, Catalonia has been ranked number 2 when it comes to attraction of FDI for health tech in the world. Not talking of in Europe or in Spain, in the world. So please remember that. And Catalonia has been ranked number 3 in the world for FDI attraction for AI. So there could not have been a better place than this where we are sitting to talk about what we are talking about today. And that brings me to the next question to Alba. Alba, tell us a bit more about the AI factory that you have in BSc, because that's very interesting. We would want to understand, let's say, about data, synthetic data, data sets, and how do we kind of replicate the models that you're creating in the AI factory to countries like India?
Okay. So the AI factory, specifically the BSc AI factory, is the specific implementation of this big effort in the European Commission. This is a 200 billion euro investment to basically to promote the AI economy, especially to foster innovation in SMEs and in the European industry overall, because we realize as Europeans that we are lagging behind the States and China, who are basically now leading the AI innovation. And this is the big effort that has been made at the European level. It consists on different parts. So one of it is basically the purchase of machines, of which we will have a big expansion in the Barcelona Supercomputing Center. So we have our Mare Nostrum 5, which is one of the biggest supercomputers in Europe and the largest in Spain. It is public. And for the first time, thanks to the AI factories, this will be put to the service for free of the industrial ecosystem. This means that the industries in Europe, especially SMEs, startups, and spin-offs, can use for free public supercomputing resources for innovation. So this is quite a breakthrough and a change of mentality from the European Commission, and we expect it to have a key impact in specific sectors. One of the sectors that the European Commission is highlighting is healthcare, always. One of the first ones that is mentioned for which these AI factories can have the biggest impact. This is because it is extremely challenging to bring together data and computing in a single location and to put this to the service, to offer this service to companies. And this is exactly what we are doing. So part of the AI factory at the BSc will consist on putting both models, the software, both software developed at the BSc, but also public software or private software available, together with data generated in our center, but also data that can be brought by companies, by hospitals with whom we are talking, and with whom there exists a trust relationship, and to put this at the service of companies. We expect that this can have a great impact in innovation. This just started in May this year, and we are at the moment talking, for instance, with one of the hospitals in Spain that is leading the European biomedical imaging initiatives. They have a wealth of imaging data, especially cancer data of pathology slides, and this will be made available. We are arranging not only technical but contractual agreements, because this is a very complex endeavor, to make all this data at the European level available at the BSc. We are also talking to local hospitals, very big hospitals, to provide anonymized data of all the patients that are basically treated in those hospitals. Anonymized data, laboratory data, but also the clinical records, what the physicians write in free text. So to automatize pipelines, to extract information, to anonymize it, and to make it available to create models. Models that can be used then for in any company that is interested to maybe understand better what is the evolution of a specific disease, or which is the better treatments, which are the ones that provide more secondary undesired effects, and things like that. Okay, so this can be a real breakthrough, and it is open now. So both the computing power and the service is open, and the data is coming in. So this kind of of idea can be replicated, of course, elsewhere. This is the effort of Europe to make the AI innovation shine in key sectors. And there are 19 of these AI factories in the whole continent. The BSc AI Factory is a consortium between Portugal, Spain, Romania, and Turkey, actually, with the main hub here in Barcelona, contribution from Spain.
This is very interesting, Alba, and that brings me to a question about data bias, for example. AI data bias, I think the data that you are collecting is from Europe, and if we have to replicate that model to Indian context, where the body mass index or the weight and the genes and the medical history, all of this is completely different. Let's say, for example, if we have to replicate that model per se, how do we get rid of the biases in AI models?
So I would say there's two big challenges, no? Because biases is one, but the other, I would like also to bring a connection to the previous conversation, is precisely the regulation.
Mm-hmm.
So there is the European Health Data Space regulation, which is being put into force in the next very few years in Europe. Okay. This keyword has not yet appeared in this conversation, but it's like, I felt it was the elephant in the room. Mm-hmm. So the European Health Data Space is the regulation that will enable the use of health data in any country for primary or secondary use. Mm-hmm. Primary use is basically going to the doctor, going to the physician in any country in Europe and having your data, being you a citizen in any other country, available immediately to that physician to treat you, knowing your previous medical history, mm-hmm. including previous radiographies, imaging data, lab results that you may have in your history. This is primary use, but secondary use is that the use of that data for research. Mm-hmm. We are talking about text data, but also genomic data, also imaging data. This is a big challenge, and at the BSc we have led a very specific use case to see if the European health data space is working right now. Mm-hmm. Because it's not yet working, it's being implemented slowly. What we discovered, and it's a publication, it's a recent publication from this year, is that in a use case with patients from a specific kind of colorectal cancer in Norway, Denmark, and Belgium. So we tried to extract the data to secure environments, to compute with it. And we found a different kind of blockage, being it technical, the data could not be transferred, be it ethical, the data required to have specific ethical protocols in the country, and these were not implemented, be it administrative, and none of the data from these three countries could be used. This was considered a success by the European Commission, mm-hmm. because basically it exposed what still we need to work on in terms of regulation. So it is very important to have these specific tests, you know. Like in terms of, so you mentioned in terms of ensuring equality, no? Ensuring equality and equal treatment of the data, and how to ensure that the differences are reflected. Here it is essential to promote the transdisciplinary evaluation of AI algorithms applied to healthcare. And when I say transdisciplinary evaluation, this includes having gold standard data sets. It means involving legal advisors. It means involving ethical advisors, and also having, of course, the technical people working together in specific use cases, no? Always being very specific to really understand if the models created by AI reflect reality. We often find this is not the case, but then we go into the technical details and explore explainability of those models. There are techniques to do this. And by exploring what failed, we can improve the models. We can improve the models and most likely improve the original data. So identify that there are specific populations that were not included. So it is essential to have a source population that reflects the population where you want to implement the AI model. Mm-hmm. You say a model developed in Europe with European population will most likely be biased if we apply it to Indian population. But this is the case if we do it with people from different regions in Spain, most mm-hmm. likely, or from different hospitals. You take models trained at private hospitals, which are biased in terms of the people that go there. this will be a model bias towards a public hospital patient base, so to say.
Interesting. And can synthetic data help in this case to bring the biases down, for example?
So synthetic data can help if the original data from where the synthetic data has been generated is representative of everyone. It can help to develop the technical pipelines, the technical models, to put the infrastructure in place. But the synthetic data per se cannot help to train models which are not biased. It will help to put in place the right solutions without needing to go through all the hassle of the regulations to access that health data. This can help a lot, right? But it will not help when you want to have unbiased data, because you will need the high quality data of the representative population.
I think a fair point there, Alba. And I'm going to ask a question which maybe somebody from the audience also might have for you, and I want your as well as Rutuja's opinion there. And for me, I think that's the elephant in the room, the trust. So let's say, God forbid, something goes wrong in the treatment of a patient. And Rutuja, you can answer first, a lawyer and then the researcher. Who's to be blamed for that? Is it the algorithms, the machine, the data which has gone, the system, the doctor, the researcher, or let's say the government which has not regulated it enough? So who's responsible for that?
You know, you asked me the question earlier on, why hasn't the uptick in healthcare startups been that great in India? I think it's also in many ways that in India, between a doctor-patient conversation, the liability will be on the doctor for the kind of advice they're providing the patient, independent of whatever they are using to provide that advice. It could be a medical device, it could be another software, it could be an AI taking scripts from their conversation and providing indirect input. It's going to be on the doctor. And as a result of which, the doctors have been to a very large extent reticent in adopting newer softwares. They're happy to try it, but are they endorsing it at large scale? Not so much. Are they trying to experiment with it? Some of them, yes. And some of them are very hesitant in the way they want to use it at scale. And that's the reason why we need to have a relook at the way Indian regulatory regime is structured. Interestingly, the government a couple of days ago actually came up with something called as the draft medical device rules, if I'm not mistaken. And it proposes a very interesting matrix. It says we have medical devices currently in the country. For medical devices that are not invasive on the body, the extent of scrutiny, the extent of compliance they have for licensing or post-market surveillance is comparatively less. But the second the medical device starts becoming invasive to my body, for instance, an insulin pump, for example, the compliance is far, far higher. And that was the yardstick they used, depending upon the degree of invasiveness. This new matrix proposes whatever is my use case, right? It is going to be looked at with respect to in which situation I am using this particular software and what is going to be the extent of influence of the inputs this software gives me on my treatment. So if I am just giving you an advice and not really deciding the direction of my treatment, the compliance and therefore the liability on it is going to be comparatively lower. But if it is not, it could be the same software in a different situation, then the liability and the compliance for it is going to be significantly higher. It raises questions around how the country wants to also look at post-market surveillance for things like these. And that's the reason why the liability question goes around the loop in many ways, because it's at the end of it, who is deploying it, how is it being deployed? And at the very end of it, this is what we say for AI, right? There has to be human in the loop at all times. And at the end of it, if the doctor is going to use a particular device for any kind of treatment, there has to be, the final level of discretion has to be at the doctor's end. So which means then you look back at that supply chain. So when the doctor is adopting that particular tech, how is he discussing and talking to the deployers and the developers of that tech? Is he having enough visibility on the way the algorithm is going to work or not? And therefore that brings us to the conversation around transparency in your models, the way you're training your models, the way you're collecting your data. Is it inclusive at all or not? If it is it representative enough? Like she said, right, what may be relevant in Spain may not really be relevant in India. And so then therefore all of your questions around in case of an AI situation, around AI governance become relevant, right? Of transparency, of accountability, of inclusion, and so on and so forth. And so liability again goes back into that loop of at which situation are you talking about what? If it's doctor-patient, then it's of course the doctor's liability, not the software developer's liability. But if it's between the doctor and the developer, it's between who has created the software and how it is going to get used.
So I think it's a vicious cycle, and we can't decide who's to be blamed.
Just to add, from a consumer standpoint, it is always the doctor. But there are many more layers behind it as to where the responsibility lies.
Absolutely, yeah.
And at times it would be the patient as well, because patient might not be able to describe the initial issues that they are facing properly, and with women more so in rural India. Because of various social constructs.
So probably for the audience, next time you see a doctor, please make sure that he's not using any new system. And if he is, make sure it works perfectly fine. Alba, your answer to that.
I need to educatedly disagree with your statement.
Please.
Because there's two things, no? So you just mentioned trust. This was essential in terms of liability also towards AI systems. But I believe trust is also essential between the doctor and the AI system. So doctors will adopt AI systems as long as they understand what they are doing, as long as they understand if these systems are substituting them or not, as long as they understand if these systems are helping them to treat patients better.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you go to the doctor, and actually the doctor, this is happening in Spain in some cases, for instance now, the doctor asks you for permission to record what you are telling him or her. Then you provide consent, and there's doctors recording the conversation. Then this conversation is automatically transcribed, and then there is an AI model that automatically transforms that into a report. This saves enormous time for the doctor. So the doctor can actually talk to you, look at you in the eye, not in the screen, and typing all the time. So the doctor can explore you, can look at you in the eye, and can make those specific questions and explore you more in depth. So have the quality time with you. So all that boring part that a doctor should not be doing, which is the actual typing, an AI system is helping to do it. This is also AI. The transcription of speech to text, and the transformation of that raw text into structured report, that's also an AI system there behind. So in this case, AI is tremendously helping the doctor, and the doctor is understanding exactly what the AI system is doing. Can it be biased or not? Well, yes, it can be biased. Then the doctor needs to read the report and say, no, well, it didn't say this, or yes. But obviously, in this case, AI is tremendously helpful, and it plays in your direct favor as a patient, right? It's not something as complex as saying an AI is interpreting this MRI image and saying some, weird keywords that I don't understand as an outcome. No, it's something very direct.
Very interesting point of doctors trusting AI models. I think that's also one angle to look at. And I just hope that doctors are not looking at ChatGPTs for this. We are using the smaller language models for that. But Rahul, one last question for you before we wrap this up. I think we are running out of time. Please make it short. Regulations, barriers, is it an opportunity to grow, or is it a hurdle?
Okay, very loaded question. Truth be told, from a startup or from an entrepreneur point of view, a lot of times regulations can be a barrier. But if used right, and by used, I'm not saying bypassing, by used, I'm saying if you actually follow these regulations, you will end up having a product that is good for the end consumer. If you try to bypass some of the laws there, and some of the apps have done that in the past, you will end up hurting yourself, and your business might come crashing down one day. But it again, speaking like a true consultant, it depends. But it is both an opportunity as well as a threat, and one needs to be very careful in the way they are using it. So.
Perfect. I think perfect answer. This is what I was looking for. Any questions from the audience? Anyone? No questions. So I think we did good job. No questions. So before we wrap this up, I think let me put it very clearly what Rutuja, you mentioned about India is doing on at a mass level in a digital way, reaching out to the end patient. Alba, you mentioned about use of technology such as AI and digital twinning to make it safer, faster, and cheaper for patients to get better treatment. And for you, Rahul, it's about breaking that border, getting the new technology and innovation from this part of the world to other parts of the world. But let me tell you, I think India and Spain, like everybody has been saying since morning, we need to not learn from each other. I don't like this word. We need to work together. We need to work together to build something better for humanity. Spain can't teach India, and India can't teach Spain. Let's sit down, work together, build something for the humanity, for the future, for the betterment of the society. Let's make it cheaper, better, faster for the patients. What we are talking about is more than 1.5 billion people within these two countries. Just imagine there's an ocean, 8 billion plus people in the world. And when India thinks, India doesn't think national, India thinks global. That's the motto, and I think let's wrap it up here. Thank you so much, Alba, Rutuja, and Rahul.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Now we have a little coffee to make a coffee break, and in like 20 minutes, we'll come back. So thank you.